Hey guys, welcome back to the M3D Live podcast where we dive into everything in the world of golf, and we have so much to talk about this week. This is our US Open recap show, and I think you guys will agree it was one of the most interesting, up and down, just bizarre US Opens of all time. We had a few big names up there, but definitely some players making a real charge and a real name for themselves. And of course, JJ Spaun, what an absolutely incredible win. We have so much to talk about today, but let's start out with JJ Spaun. What a win. I don't think anyone saw it coming. I don't even think JJ Spaun saw it coming. Yes, he's had some incredible performances this year. He is a winner on the PGA Tour, but not one of the more recognizable names out there. And I think the most kind of what he's known for before this week was really that playoff with Rory Mcilroy, losing in that playoff. And you know, it's an incredible story. He was considering giving up golf altogether, really struggling, thinking about doing something else. And now he is a US Open champion, winning at probably the most difficult golf course that hosts the US Open, and arguably even the most difficult golf course setup in the entire world. They did change the course a lot for this week. I saw a lot of people talking about how they'd grown the rough, how they were mowing the rough so that it stood straight upright. There was no sort of, so basically the ball would just bury straight down in it. They grew the rough up all around the bunkers as well, which was a bit cruel potentially at times. We'll discuss that in this episode. But absolutely incredible week for JJ, and that final putt, what a putt. The longest putt hold of the week on the 18th green on Sunday. I believe it was 64 feet. And in those conditions, when it is that dark, I know if you guys were watching, it probably didn't look that dark. I can guarantee you it was significantly darker than it looked. These cameras have a way of adding more light to make it look a bit brighter for our screens on our TVs, but as someone who has filmed in the dark plenty of times out on golf courses, trust me, it would have been very, very difficult to see out there. They weren't even going to go to a playoff yesterday if it was tied. They were actually going to have the playoff on Monday, and he obviously just needed 2 putts from that 64 feet, but what a relief, what a shock and relief. And I mean, not an easy putt either. 64 feet, not like it was just straight back up the hill or anything. This had a huge amount of break left to right on it. I hope you guys have seen the clips. It looked absolutely incredible. I mean, just to get it within 4 feet would have been an incredible putt. And he definitely held a huge amount of putts that final round, probably over, you know, I'd say close to 150 feet or so of putts that final round. I know he held 2 other putts that were kind of 30 plus feet. So incredible putting performance, and that's really what seemed to win it for JJ. But of course, where there is a winner, there is a loser, and Sam Burns. 2 weeks in a row for this guy. I mean, absolutely soul-crushing. Clearly playing some very, very good golf. Was a very good player. Was super, super consistent. Has had his struggles. Is now back to competing at the highest level again. Very good friends with Scottie Schefflers, which I'm sure doesn't hurt your golf game at all. And just an incredible week. Really, again, I don't think anyone would have seen it coming. Yes, he had a very, very good performance last week. Unfortunately, lost in a playoff to Ryan Fox. And to be honest, kind of bottled it a bit in the playoff. Didn't really look like he was comfortable. Didn't really take charge and come out and grab the tournament and grab that trophy. Really kind of looked, I don't know, a little bit nervous potentially, or yeah, not great. A few kind of putts missed. Is the #1 putter, though, leads the putting stats on the PGA Tour this year, which was a huge shock to me. I thought, Sam Burns, known as quite a good ball striker, quite a long hitter, hits, just a very, very simple little fade out there. So it was pretty shocking to hear that stat for me. And again, I did not see this coming. Even after last week, I thought, it was a bit shocking, and obviously a huge, huge collapse after he made that double bogey, which again, we're going to dive into some more detail. I personally thought that drop, I thought was cruel. I thought it definitely should have been a drop. It seemed, yeah, I don't know. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts in the comments. To me, it should have been a drop. You could see how wet it was. They were kind of looking at where he was standing and saying, okay, well, it's not that wet where your feet are, etc., because he was on quite a slope. But where the ball was like the lowest point on the fairway, so it's where all the water gathers. I just thought you could very clearly see there was a huge amount of water under that golf ball. If I was Sam Burns, I would not have handled it as well as he did, I'll tell you that. I mean, yeah, it almost felt like he had the US Open taken away from him. Yes, of course, he made some other mistakes. There were other mistakes he made, but that was, to a degree, it was out of his hands, I think. He hit the fairway, hit a good drive, hits the fairway, is just in the worst possible spot on the fairway, cannot get relief, and had two rules officials come over. He challenged the first guy, had another rules official come over, still no relief. I thought that was a bit cruel, but I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below. And where do you go after that? I mean, after losing in that fashion, after having that bad a break 2 weeks in a row, losing in that fashion, getting so close, leading, pretty much the whole way, being up there, it's not going to be easy to get over it. Hopefully he still sees this as a massive positive. It is still an incredible week at an incredibly difficult golf course, and hopefully we see Sam Burns back up there again. Let's talk about Scottie Scheffler for a second. Not the best week for Scottie. I actually thought he played okay. Definitely not his best. Very frustrated. He was on the range, I believe, on Friday night after round 2. Very frustrated, working very hard with his coach, Randy Smith, kind of visibly very frustrated. Not hitting the ball how he wants, clearly. But in my mind, it wasn't really Scottie's long game that let him down this week. It was his putting. He finished at +4, 4 over par for the tournament, and JJ Spaun won at -1 after a huge hold putt on the final green. But Scottie Scheffler missed a lot of putts, a lot of short putts, and he had a lot of birdie looks, which he didn't hole, kind of in the 12 to 20 foot range. I believe in round 3, he missed about 3 putts from within sort of 4 feet. So there you go. There's 3 shots right there. So it was a little bit weird to me that he's so focused on his long game, because seemingly his long game put him in contention. He wasn't that far away. It was kind of his putting that let him down. And Scottie obviously has had ups and downs with his putting. Clearly the best, probably the best ball striker in the world, if not one of the best. Has really struggled with his putting. Putting been below par for a long time. But recently his putting has gotten a lot better. So I hope we don't see another dip in his putting there. I hope he kind of figures that out, because it is incredible when he strikes the ball as well as he does, and even if he just putts okay or good, not in anything amazing, but he's going to win tournaments in that case. And of course, guys, another big name we have to discuss is Rory Mcilroy. Now, let's dive into performance-wise. There's quite a lot to discuss with Rory. Performance-wise, kind of an average week, I would say. Made the cut on the number. but definitely not playing his best golf. Very, very visibly frustrated. He missed the cut at the RBC Canadian Open the week before this by quite a long way. Shot, I believe, 78 in round 2, which is hugely, hugely disappointing for Rory at an event that he, goes to every year and really likes. So definitely not playing his best golf, and some very, very frustrated moments clearly out on the golf course. Several moments where he was throwing clubs. I'm sure you guys saw the one where he just tomahawked through this iron, probably about 30 or 40 yards or so. So clearly not hitting the shots he wants to hit, and very, very visibly frustrated. Of course, Oakmont is that kind of golf course as well. That's, there was a lot of players getting pretty frustrated out there. But one of the more interesting things was Rory Mcilroy's press conference on, I believe it was Saturday. Just some weird comments, just some really weird comments. I highly recommend you guys listen to it. A few of the highlights were kind of saying, what's he looking forward to about the last round? And he basically just said, I hope it's a 4.5 hour round and we can just get out of here. Basically just wants to be done and dusted. He also kind of said he didn't really care if he made the cut or not. He wasn't really too bothered about being there. Yeah, just not what you want to hear. It seems like, Rory again declined media, I believe, Thursday and Friday, and has made several comments how he hasn't been happy with how the media has dealt with certain things, like the non-conforming driver he dealt with at the PGA Championship and how that was all leaked. So just some really weird moments, and it seems like every time he gets in front of a camera and starts answering questions, he's kind of losing himself some fans. I mean, it's not really what you want to hear, especially after the start he had to this year, winning Pebble Beach, winning at TPC Sawgrass, and of course winning the Masters. You kind of, expect a little bit more of a upbeat, fairly happy Rory McIlroy, I guess. So, very, very odd. It seems like maybe there's other things going on there that we don't know about. Hard to really speculate, knowing so little, but just some really weird comments. And also his press conference was just very, very blunt, very quick. Normally in these press conferences, when guys answer questions, they'll take 2 to 4, even 5 or 6 minutes answering each question. So normally not too many questions get asked. Rory was just answering so bluntly, just one sentence, short answers that, they did ask him quite a lot of questions in a fairly short space of time. So I would love to hear your thoughts on Rory McIlroy and what you see for his future. I mean, going back to the Open at Royal Portrush this year, that will be really, really interesting as, a home Open championship for Rory back to Northern Ireland. So it will be very, very, very interesting to see what happens there. I think, yes, a lot of people have been talking about, has Rory just done it all now? Has he, is he lacking motivation? He's even said himself he's lacking motivation and he needs to set some new goals. He's completed the career Grand Slam, won the Masters. So where do we go from here? You would think winning your sort of home Open Championship at Royal Portrush would be, a pretty good goal, and certainly one that if he doesn't complete might be a bit of a regret of his career looking back. So let me know your thoughts, guys. Would love to hear them. Disappointing week for Bryson Dechambeau. Missed cut, not what we wanted to see. After putting out some quality content in his preparation video at Oakmont in his practice round, I thought, he played incredibly well in that practice round. I thought we'd see a bit more of that. Again, didn't really look very good with the putter to me. looked a little bit sloppy, was struggling with the pace of the greens, and to be honest, he wasn't the only one, guys. There was a lot of golfers out there struggling with the pace of the greens. It's hard to gauge visually at Oakmont from the camera angles the actual slopes on the greens, but you could kind of very clearly see, one, they were very quick, rolling at about 16 on the stimp meter, which is insane. Two, you could just see the balls kind of wobbling around both ways. Incredibly difficult conditions to actually hole putts in and to make birdies and get shots back. Another two players we have to mention, Viktor Hovland and Adam Scott. Two of the nicest guys in the game. Love watching these guys. Very, very different ends of their career. Adam Scott more coming to the end of his career, been around for a long time. Viktor Hovland, you know, still looking for that first major championship, and one of the younger, more, you know, nicest guys on tour. Hardly ever hear bad words said about him, and good to see him playing some good golf again. A little bit inconsistent at times, but, you know, always so good to see him up towards the top of the leaderboard. Would have been great to see him, you know, get into a playoff or one or two shots closer. Didn't look like he was going to get that close in the end. Kind of same for Adam Scott. Was hovering a few shots away from the lead and playing some good golf, but kind of missed fairways at the wrong times and had a costly double bogey. So it was a bit disappointing, but great to see those guys up there, and hopefully we see both of them up there at the Open Championship. Certainly one you could definitely see them both competing in again. Robert McIntyre, absolute charge back. Probably the only golfer who really made a kind of a significant under par run to kind of charge back and grab this title. Everyone was gradually, slowly dropping shots, making bogeys, moving down the leaderboard in the wrong direction. But Robert McIntyre charging up that leaderboard. What an incredible round on Sunday. And I have to say, guys, he's been playing some great golf this year. Could we see him potentially at the Open Championship making a good run? He's obviously a Scottish golfer, Scottish Open Championship winner. I reckon he's not a bad shout for the Open Championship. Could definitely see him being up there on the leaderboard. And again, seemingly a very, very, very nice guy. I know when he won an event recently, he took the following week off and just went back home to spend time with some family. So clearly he has his priorities right. And guys, we had a few live golfers up there this week as well. Tyrrell Hatton and Carlos Ortiz. I don't know Carlos very well, but I've heard a lot of good things about him. One of the nicest guys you will possibly meet. A great young player with a lot of talent. Works with Pete Cowan. He won in a live event in, where was it? Testing my memory, last year in 2024. I was there. It was it Houston? I'm going to say Houston. I think it was Live Golf Houston he won, I think. But very, very good, young, talented golfer. Great to see him making a run in these majors. It clearly has a lot of potential. And Tyrrell Hatton. I love Tyrrell. I don't know him a huge amount, but I have shared a few cars with him in my time, and he is a very, very down-to-earth, very nice guy, very easy to talk to, very engaging. Not always someone I like walking around the golf course with, because some of his reactions can be a little bit extreme. He's kind of quite different away from the golf course, very kind of down to earth and not so heated and passionate, but one of the most engaging players to watch out there. Just wears his emotions on his sleeve and just, you know, it doesn't hold back. You can very clearly tell what he is thinking by the expression on his face. I have to say, as the lead kind of narrowed down in the last few holes, I was really hoping Tyrrell Hatton was gonna come out with the trophy for a few reasons. Obviously, having met him and spoken to him, but also him being an English guy, and just, I think, somewhat of an underrated golfer potentially. You could probably say, just, you know, he's had a lot of good performances, had some huge wins, one of the best putters in the world, but not always talked about that much, and just an incredible wedge player, incredible golf game. So really, really good to see Tyrrell up there. A little bit disappointing, he got a bad break on the 17th hole, the drivable par 4, when he was hitting this chip off a downslope and couldn't really do much with it. Ended up making bogey on what was, you know, quite a, well, one of the easier holes on the golf course, where some players were picking up shots. But hopefully we see him again. I could really see him making a run at the Open Championship this year, and that would be incredible to see Tyrrell Hatton hold the claret jug at the end of the 2025 Open Championship. But guys, let's talk about the venue for a few minutes. Oakmont Country Club. What a place. Cruel. I don't know if I want to say fair or not. I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Was it cruel? Was it fair? I think maybe some of the rough was a little bit overkill at times. I don't necessarily think they needed all the rough around the faces and slopes of the bunkering, because the bunkers weren't really great places to be most of the time anyway. There was a lot of small bunkers with very steep faces when you wouldn't have been able to reach a green anyway, so that was kind of penalizing enough. The one thing I didn't like about the rough as well was it didn't really offer much in the way of recovery shots. And I think when you look at the best major championships, the most iconic major championships, the most iconic shots of all time, they are, you know, first of all, the most iconic shots of all time typically are recovery shots, right? Some of the best shots of all time actually come after some of the worst shots of all time. You know, like Tiger's chip on the 16th at Augusta. And, you know, no one talks about his tee shot being pretty bad to actually put the ball there in the first place. You've obviously seen Phil Mickelson make a huge amount of incredible recovery shots, Pine Straw, Augusta, and even last week in Live, hold one of the most ridiculous, I don't even know what to call it, flop shots, pitch shots, basically over his own shoulder, and actually hold it. It was just ridiculous. Not something you see unless it's like on an Instagram trick shot that's probably taken someone 5 hours or more. So I didn't necessarily like that, because it felt like once you made a mistake, once you drove it into the rough, it was just an automatic bogey. And I have nothing wrong with the US Open being tough. I have nothing wrong with people making bogeys. I have nothing wrong with the score being over par. In fact, the winning score wasn't over par in the end, but I have nothing wrong with that, especially as it's only 1 week of the year. It's the hardest week of the year, the hardest event of the year typically. So that's fine. That's all great. I love it. I think we gear up for the US Open and we look forward to that. We look forward to that drama, those meltdowns, those, you know, that frustration coming out and that battle, you know, against the golf course. I just thought at times it was, I don't know, when most of the professional golfers out there could hardly get the ball on the green from a few yards away, that's when I don't know if that's a little bit too difficult. I'd almost rather see it be difficult in different ways. Almost like, yes, hack it out and be able to give yourself a putt. But, I mean, how many players did we see hitting 2, 3 pitch shots in a row. Yeah, quite a few. So I would love to hear your thoughts. Did you think it was too cruel, or did you think it was fair? It certainly put a premium on driving the golf ball well and hitting greens. And I have to say, the greens were absolutely huge. So I guess if you are missing them, then you could say it's a bad shot or bad course management, to be fair, if you're being too aggressive. But the frustration was definitely too much for some players out there. There was some damage done to some of the lockers in the changing room, which I obviously have not been in the lockers at the Oakmont changing rooms, but they are supposedly iconic, very, very old, a lot of history there. And supposedly there have been reports of some players doing some damage to those after a very frustrated few days at Oakmont. Reportedly Wyndham Clark, although it hasn't been confirmed. That's a little bit disappointing to see. Shot of the week, for me there has to be 2, and they are both by the same player, JJ Spaun. First of all, his drive on the 17th hole that set up his birdie, which put him in the position on 18. Without that drive, finding the green, giving him a 20-foot putt for eagle, which he 2-putted for birdie. I think that 18th hole could look very differently and could go very differently. And of course, the second has to be his putt on 18, 64 feet, the longest putt of the entire week at the US Open. That is absolutely incredible. Now, the worst collapse has to go to Sam Burns. I don't think it's his fault. I feel bad he didn't get the drop, but that double bogey on the back 9 coming down the stretch really took him out of it. Not his fault. Should have been a drop. Let me know what you guys think on that in the comments below. Spaun, where will he go from here? He's going from strength to strength. Could we see him at the Open Championship at the top of the leaderboard? Will he pick up more majors? It's definitely an interesting one. Let me know what you guys think. I definitely think he will contend at the Open Championship. His long game looks super, super solid. Putting looks great. Swing looks so good. Fundamentally, love the ball flight he hits. Such a great ball striker. Yeah, be a very, very interesting one. Hopefully it's not one and done for JJ Spaun. Let me know your favourite moment in the comments from the US Open this week. And also let me know what you think on the difficulty, guys. Was it cruel? Was it fair? I would love to hear your thoughts. My thoughts for the Open Championship. I definitely think Spaun will feature. I kind of think Spieth could make a little run. He played pretty well this week. A few loose shots here and there, a few loose mistakes, loose drop shots. But great to see Jordan Spieth getting back up towards the top of that major championship leaderboard. Scheffler, of course, hopefully, putts a little bit better. And hopefully we see him up there, because it's always a better major championship when you have the number 1 player in the world featuring somewhere in that top 10. 2 players that performed very well this week that I think will do well in the Open is Tyrrell Hatton and Robert McIntyre, both from the UK, both used to links golf, tough conditions. I could really see them doing well. Great short games, great talents, super, super competitive. But let me know who is your pick for the 2025 Open Championship at Royal Portrush. Thank you guys so much for watching this episode. It really does mean a lot. It helps me out so much trying to produce this content for you guys. If you can, give us a follow. Hit that like button wherever you're watching. Comment any thoughts you have down below. And as always, I will see you in the next episode.